I will never get a brainer. My bitch, she playing with my balls, call her Serena. I keep beating the pussy up just like I did Tina. She told my dick white cause that bitch was a cream. She off her X pills, herpes, oxys, and the Molly. And I like the way she moves her body. She gave me head in the backseat of the Maserati and it ride me. She like the way I ride the beat. Ride me. Baby, get on top.
There we are. What's up, everybody? It's a solid Wednesday night. You got the College Game Breakers Conference USA episode coming at you. Took a week off as I was away on vacation, so we're going to hit you up with a double one. We're figuring out when we're going to reschedule the one for, but we figured we keep getting at you on our Wednesday nights. Rex and Steven here as usual from The Breakdown. You can follow us at thebreakdownsports.com. That's where you can catch all of our good stuff. Jordan's got some golf plays. We got some soccer articles, fantasy football stuff coming out there for you. So whatever you need, we got you covered on all those fronts. If I get a little distracted, I'm watching the Sixers, giving myself some fake hope right now, thinking that they could still do something. In about an hour or so, I'll have the Flyers on as well. So, Steven, bear with me. But college basketball is life. So I'll be definitely locked in because Conference USA is a solid conference this year. I think there's at least 4 teams that can take home this title. So before we get into that, we'll always start off with our recruits. But Steven, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, I definitely needed that week off because last Wednesday would have been the day after the whole part of my state was out of power. I think they said like 95% of the state was out of power. So there was no way we were doing anything anyway. But, man, it is good to be back just online.
Yeah, you got that new setup, so you're obviously not in your place because I doubt it still has power. So hopefully you and anyone else up in the Northeast area that don't got it will get it back soon because that's brutal. I'd be sweating my ass off. So glad you're able to get out of it and get back into some normal life.
Yeah, going on day 8 right now. One of the longest outages I've had ever.
Man, Connecticut's got to get their shit together, but let's get it off with the recruits. We'll have 40 to 40 or 44 to 40. We'll touch on some news and then we'll get into the CUSA preview.
Yep. So we start off this week with number 44. That's Andre Curbelo. He is a 6-foot point guard from Puerto Rico who's committed to Illinois. And he's not gonna overpower you physically at the guard spot, but what he can do really well is he just knows where to be on the court, and he's a really good passer. So he's not beating you with like explosiveness, but he's gonna outthink you to get to his spots to make shots and find open teammates.
Yeah, Curbelo looks like he could be a solid addition to this squad. You got Trent Frazier there. He'll probably be playing most of the point, but past him, Adam Miller is another freshman they got coming in. So Curbelo could definitely crack that starting lineup potentially if something does happen to Frazier. But I like Curbelo's upside more next season than this one because I think it's going to take him a little bit time, especially committing this late. But Curbelo's can definitely score the ball. So definitely think he could be a high usage player when he does enter the court.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to talk about it later in the news, but Illinois did have a point guard come back who's really going to limit Curbelo's minutes this upcoming year. And next we got Micah Peavy, a 6'7" small forward, only listed at about 172 pounds. What he's good at is finding his own shot in the lane and just being able to get past defenders. It's not really him being like a huge athlete who's going to be going above the rim all the time, but he has a really solid shot inside the 3-point line. so pretty much from the basket out to just outside the free throw line. He is he's a good defender. A lot of this stuff's going to take some time just with like physical development, but I think at Texas Tech he fits in well with his defensive ability to get a good amount of minutes probably off the bench next year.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll definitely be seeing solid minutes from him because Santos Silva is probably the only guy that's ahead of him in the depth chart at power forward. So that's where Micah Peavy's definitely going to be relied on. He might be their sixth or seventh man, depending how they go with the rotations, if they decide to switch the guard or the big man first. But we could see the potential of him being the first guy off the bench. The thing that I like the best from him, though, is he can grab boards. He cleans the glass pretty well, so I think that's one reason why they'll bring him in.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna be a key contributor. It's just I don't know if his stats are gonna show him as much of a contributor as he probably will be this year.
You'll need to do that to get the minutes at Texas Tech, though. If you come in and play solid and just play in that system, Beard will get you in no matter what.
Yeah. Next up, we got Hunter Dickinson, a 7'2", 255-pound center who's committed to Michigan. He is, just his size alone is going to get him on the court this year. He's not a huge athlete, but you don't usually expect that from a 7'2" guy. He's going to be good in the pick and roll. He's a really solid rebounder. He can hit from the mid-range. That's about as far out as his shooting range goes right now. And just his ability with his size to see the court from the high or the low post to find an open man when he gets double teamed, I think will make him I think he should definitely be starting this year for Michigan.
Yeah, the only other option they would have starting at center if they go with Wagner and just go with a smaller lineup. This is definitely a good replacement because they lost English, who was supposed to transfer but wasn't able to from Purdue. So that's where Dickinson might not start in the first few games, but towards the end of the season, if he proves that he can hold it down, and that will be solid. Extending the shot's going to be the biggest thing for him. If not, that pick and roll might be just a little bit easier to defend, knowing that he's always going to have to roll. But with college b-ball, always just being a roller isn't the worst thing there is. So if he can just stretch it out a little bit further, get to the high school 3 range, then I think that's what's going to make this offense open up more for Livers and everyone else out there. Is Dickinson's definitely the tallest guy that we've talked about so far, but I think you're muted.
Yeah, it's either Dickinson or Kai Soto. I think they're both around the same height. So next up we got a 6'8" power forward in Jamin Brakefield, who's committed to Duke. He's probably the best athlete we've talked about today. He can shoot it from deep, but he loves getting to the rim still. He's obviously a really solid defender and rebounder, especially for his size at 6'8" as a power forward. I think what helps him most is he just has a well-rounded game. It's more about there have been times where you don't really see him going full speed all the time, which is maybe a little bit understandable when they're playing some of the high school teams who don't have the same competition as him. But he needs to show that he can just be like a high energy guy at Duke if he wants to be like one of the main guys this year.
Yeah, the only thing that I think can hold him potentially back is Duke just has a bunch of size next season and not that many guards. Because when you got Hurt, who's about the same size, Jalen Johnson, Mark Williams, who we haven't talked about yet, and then Henry Coleman, who we talked about a few episodes, there's just a lot of guys that kind of play that same role. So Breakerfield's going to have to do something. It could be his athleticism and his all-around game that makes him stand out more than the other one. But I think he's just in a spot where there's a bunch of depth, and that could be the only thing holding him back from getting at least half of the game next season, because the Dukies love their freshmen, but almost the whole roster is freshmen other than Hurt, Moore Jr., and Goldwire.
Yeah, it's a really young team this year, so really I don't know where he's going to fit in, because that's all going to come down to what happens in training camp, which is why maybe his lack of a motor, or what people say might be a lack of a motor, could hurt him, because if he's not going all out in practice and training camp when everybody else is, then he could just start farther down on the bench. And sometimes when it's like that at Duke with a bunch of really talented guys, he might just fall into a spot where he doesn't get the minutes he deserves.
Yeah, I think him and Coleman will be going the entire season. Who stands out more is going to get the minutes in that like last rotation spot.
Yeah. And last up, we have Matty Sissoko, a 6'9", 230-pound center committed to Michigan State. He's a really good athlete, especially for his size, to be a 6'9" power forward / center. He's pretty much the opposite of Breakfield, in that everybody knows this guy is going to be playing full intensity the entire time he's on the court. And with his athleticism, I really like him as a rim defender, even though he might not have the size to be considered a Power 5 center necessarily. He's best, like his best scoring so far has been just coming off the offensive glass or in transition, but it's definitely something that's like his interior and shooting game's improving. And I think he'll get the minutes to improve through game action at Michigan State.
Yeah, Sissoko's definitely going to get the time. They don't have a lot of depth up in the front court for them. So he's going to have to come in and grab the boards, because Michigan State might have an issue clearing the glass next season, because Bingham Jr., he's all right. Not really sold on him. Hauser is a solid rebounder, but past those two, they got no one else who's going to dominate those boards. So that's where Sissoko could definitely get his implant in and be the first guy off the bench, because he's going to be fighting with just a guard. So that just, once again, it just depends if you're going guard or big man off the bench first.
Yeah.
So that wraps it up for recruits. We're going to get into the top 30 next week. So we're just about there to get to number one. I know all you guys are sitting on the edge of your seat to see who the number one recruit is coming next season. You could probably Google it and find out. But if you want to build up the suspense, keep checking us out while we're breaking it down. So we just got two parts of news that we want to hit on this week before we get into the Conference USA preview. The first one is, it's a report. Nothing has been confirmed yet. The Pac-12 is considering canceling the non-con games for the basketball season. This is coming after the Pac-12 and the Big Ten canceled their all the fall sports, including mostly football, which is the biggest thing. So if the Pac-12 cancels their non-con games, that would be very strange to see what they could possibly do to fill up that 25 to 30 game schedule, because you'll be missing about 15 of them. You can't, even if you play each team twice, so you get around there, but we don't see that in college basketball, and I wouldn't want to see the Pac only play the Pac-12, because I'll boost them up and make them look much better than they are. But the most interesting thing that I'm getting from this is there's been no reports on this. This might just be my brain going at it, but could we see some non-con bubbles in like the major cities throughout the United States, so you could get like a Northwest, Southeast, New England bubble? So that would be the one thing that I think we could see with college basketball compared to college football, is if football starts to struggle, we could see the NCAA maybe think about this bubble technique. Don't ask me for all the details, because I'd have no idea how it will logistically work. But let's just say we get like a New England bubble going. So you could have Vermont, Maine, BU, UConn, maybe New Hampshire, UMass, just get all these different schools that are in the same conference. You might have to double up. And like, for example, if Providence was also included in that bubble, then if Providence and UConn played each other, technically it'd probably be a non-con game, even though they're conference opponents. So what are your thoughts on the bubbles? Do you think it's even a little bit realistic or what?
I don't know. I think the only way to make it realistic is for the NCAA to just say everybody's non-conference is canceled and we switch everything to only bubble games, because you can't try to have teams playing in like early season tournaments in like Hawaii or whatever and then trying to come back to the bubble, because it's just gonna cause too much confusion. But for like the Northeast bubble or New England, I mean, I think it would be good because it gives, especially up in my area, there's not a lot of Power 5 teams here. It's like, realistically, if you're truly talking New England, then it's like you're not including New York or Pennsylvania or Jersey or Maryland or anything. So it's like a bunch of smaller schools like URI, BC or BU. BCU or BC at this point, pretty much, because they're never good in the ACC. But so BU, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and like URI, it gives them that extra test against a Power 5 team that they probably wouldn't have gotten earlier. Like, they probably wouldn't have gotten if they were just going off their regular schedule. So it helps out the smaller schools and like the areas that don't have like the loaded power. So definitely, like, if for UConn, that's like a good tune up to the Big East, because it's like, yeah, we can just run through all these teams. We'll be 9-0, whatever, chilling, getting the team chemistry down. So I mean, I think it could work. I think the NCAA is not smart enough to make it work, but I think it can work.
Yeah, especially as we're seeing with football, where all the conference commissioners basically have final say and can do what they want. That's where it's going to fall into the roadblock where especially with in college football, you got 10 conferences and you're independents. With college b-ball, what do we got, like 32 or 33 conferences? So trying to get all of them on the same page and just realistically, it might be close to impossible, but if the college football seasons fails, I wouldn't be shocked to see if college basketball tries to experiment with it. And like you said, for all these lower or mid-major schools, they'll get that strength of schedule and RPI up much higher than they usually do. And then your CCSU might run the table where you said they'd have 12 wins. They'd probably all be coming in the non-con. So I won't let you live that down where you said CCSU is going to be a 12-win team, so this is their way to kick it off strong.
Well, I mean, they will, so all they have to do is, if they get 5 in the bubble, then that means that they have to beat 7 teams in the Northeast Conference with all the guys they're bringing back. That's easy. That is light work.
So we'll get into our next bit of news. This one's going to be focused around Illinois, so let's hear it.
Okay, so we were talking about it a little bit with Curbelo, but I don't think anybody truly thought Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Coburn were both coming back this year. Like, some people thought you might get one of the two. Some people thought neither of them were coming back. And even then, they still had Illinois as a team in like the top 30 or 40 in the country this year. But then you get all those recruits, plus everybody coming back, plus those two guys not declaring for the draft. I think this is a year where Illinois makes a deep run, and you see them ranked somewhere in between the top 15 and 20 for the majority, if not all, the season.
Yeah, Dosunmu and Cockburn are obviously the two biggest players on this team. They're going to get majority of the points. So that's where that's going to be huge for them. I think that puts them into top 15 preseason poll easily there, just with given that talent and veteran leadership there. Now you mix in the good freshmen that they brought in around them. Illinois is going to be a live dog in the Big Ten next year. I'm just trying to think. Maybe Ohio State is above them. Michigan, they're probably on par with Michigan State and a little bit better than Michigan. So Illinois could be one of the conference favorites going into the season, which we haven't seen from Illini basketball in a while.
No, Illinois is a lot better than Ohio State. Ohio State, when they play other Big Ten teams, they stink. When they play non-conference teams, they look like they're the best in the country. And then they get in a conference and they're like 4-10. Everybody's like, wow, this team's so average.
Yeah, last season they were definitely a roller coaster of a team where they look like they win games that they shouldn't win, they lose games that they should lose, and yeah, so Ohio State definitely has that roller coaster. But I like them this season. We'll definitely be getting into that debate more once we get into the Big Ten previews. But let's hit it off with our Conference USA. So Conference USA last season was a pretty decent conference. They rank, according to Ken Palm, they ranked 13 of the 32 conferences. North Texas was the top dog at 20-11. They were going to be the top seed in the tournament. Their tournament didn't happen. This conference is, I don't want to call it top heavy because the bottom wasn't that weak last year, but Middle Tennessee didn't do anything too convincing. But you had 3 schools with above 20 wins, with La Tech coming in with 22-8 and Western Kentucky at 20-10. So this conference tourney was going to be wild. Then you had FIU coming in at 19-13. Most of that was non-con, but you had a solid overall conference, and you had huge contrast of tempo style. You had the 3rd fastest team in the nation, and then you had one of the slowest teams in the nation. So we'll see if those trends stay up, but you get all different types of basketball. So you get mesh of styles when you're watching this. But before we get into breaking down each team by team, we'll run through all 14 to give you our predictions of where they're going to end. These are all obviously 100% correct. So we will let you know which ones we got right. So I got Rice coming in last. Then I got Southern Miss next, FAU, Middle Tennessee, FIU, Charlotte, UTEP, and that's your 8 through 14 right there. Then I got UAB in 7th, UTSA at 6, Marshall at 5, Louisiana Tech at 4, ODU at 3, Western Kentucky at 2. Then I got the Mean Green staying on top for my number 1 squad.
Yeah, I think this is honestly the closest we've been on a full conference projections, even though we got a good amount of the teams kind of flipped just by a couple spots. I think Southern Miss comes in last and Rice comes in 13th, then FAU, then FIU, then Middle Tennessee, then UTEP, then Marshall, then Charlotte at 7, UAB at 6, UTSA 5, Old Dominion 4, Louisiana Tech 3, North Texas 2, and Western Kentucky 1.
Yeah, so we both think that there's a decent amount of schools that can have a good shot at taking this home. So I think you could make this a 4-team race. We agree on our top 3. But then when we get into our sleeper team of the conference, that'll be something that we'll get into when we preview the teams to see who could be the 4th in there. But let's get it off, and we'll start with Rice. So Rice last season didn't have the best year. What I'm pulling it up. So they went 15-17, so I'm expecting a big drop-off from them. For Scott Parra's squad, this team just cannot play any defense. That was their biggest issue, and they're losing Ako Adams going into next season. So with this Rice squad, it could get a little rough, and I believe they're also losing Trey Murphy. So when you're losing your 2 biggest contributors for the team last year, that's why I'm expecting a large drop-off where you have 3 guys that I think you can score, but none of them are a dominant scorer. So I think that's what's going to hold Rice back, and I just think this Conference USA is loaded next year, so I just don't like their chances and see them ending with less than 10 wins easily and barely breaking 3 to 5 conference wins.
Yeah, I think their biggest problem is they're losing their 3 best players. Drew Peterson's also transferring. So Trey Murphy out, Drew Peterson out, Ako Adams out. It really kills their size with Murphy and Peterson both being 6'8". And I think the best player really coming back on this team is it's probably going to be Josh Parrish, but even that, I don't really trust his scoring that much. So where I need to see somebody who will make the difference between them coming in last and them coming in somewhere towards the bottom. But I think the guy that needs to have a breakout season this year to keep them out of 14th is going to be Max Fiedler, a 6'10". He's going to be a sophomore this year. He had 4 rebounds a game in limited minutes last year, and even though he didn't put up the scoring, with them losing 12 rebounds 13 and a half rebounds combined with Adams, Peterson, and Murphy, I think Fiedler is going to need to be probably sitting somewhere around 8-9 rebounds and somewhere between 10-11 points a game for them to only take a smaller step back this year.
Yeah, so they're the team in the conference that's returning the least amount of their minutes, with only returning 30%. So like we said, there's a decent amount of turnover. It's interesting that you said Fiedler's going to be their X factor, but I can definitely see that because you need your sender. I also like Malik Ondigo. So I think that provides a nice 1-2 punch in the big men since they're both 6'10". But what I think could determine this is Chris Mullins scoring. He's not a dominant scorer, has yet to really prove that he's going to be the guy. But if he can get them close to 15 or 16 points per game, I see them jumping up potentially one spot, but I still have this team as a bottom 2. And if when you're just fighting for 13th or 14th, you're not having that great of a year. So after, do you have anything else you want to say about Rice before we jump into the next guys?
Yeah, just something real quick. Just I think Cameron Sheffield's going to step in and be a rotation small forward guy, and then Riley Abercrombie, who's coming in from Boise State, is going to be getting probably decent to pretty important minutes as a transfer this year for them. I don't know how much it helps them in the standings, but it's going to be something.
Yeah, Abercrombie, I think, could be the bigger piece coming in for them. Next, we're going to go into Southern Miss. So Southern Miss went 9-22 last season. I'm expecting them to finish right around at the same point as them. This team's issue was they just could not score the ball. They were in the high 50s to low 60s almost every single game, which is pretty rough. That one point they were sitting at 4-14 last there, and then they ended at 9-22. So throughout the whole year, they were just an up and down squad for Jay Lardner. And with these guys, they're bringing back 50% of their minutes. So maybe they could improve a little bit together. But once again, I think they're not losing their top 2 guys, which is the one thing that helps them, but they're losing basically all of their depth and Boban and Larnert Harbert Parker and Jared Rigby. So when you're losing all of that depth, that's where I'm thinking you're going to start to struggle.
Yeah. I mean, their top player, Gabe Watson, he's leaving. He's at Tulane now. And then some of their size, who was supposed to be a big guy for them this year, Hunter Dean, left. He's going to Nevada. So that's going to be tough for them. This is going to be a theme for me pretty much throughout this whole episode. But what I'm looking at for somebody who needs to step up is going to be, who was it? It was Artur Kanatzik. He is a 6'7". He's going to be a sophomore. He was one of the better players this year, but he needs to become that second or third guy to Ladavius Drain. Yeah, Ladavius Drain, because he's gonna be their, I think, their best player. Like Stevenson's gonna be good still, but I think Drain needs to take over that lead guard role, and then Kanatzik as a small forward, power forward combo needs to step up, seeing as how they didn't really bring anybody in, and then they lost two solid contributors. So I think the bench is going to be a little thinner this year, and I don't see them finishing anywhere else besides last again.
Yeah, what has me liking this squad more than Rice is Drain and Stevenson. When you bring back your two top scorers from last season, and both can get you 15 points per game, that's where I have a little bit more confidence than in Rice, where you have three guys who aren't proven scorers. And if you think Kanatzik is going to be the third guy, or even potentially jump into second, that's where I think it could help them break double-digit wins. I think they end right around between 8 to 10 wins, and this team just does not have much size. Belton is a freshman coming in. He's 6'10". He's probably the biggest guy in the roster. Then you got Stevenson at 6'8" and Kanatzik at 6'7". So with how limited they are, they're not going to be able to afford any bad foul trouble in any game, because the combo of Drain and Stevenson is going to be the usage. I'll be surprised if they pass to anyone else on this squad and just say get the rebounds and finish it that way, because Jay Malone's all right, but not sold on him. And then the one guy other than Kanatzik is Denaje Harris. He's another freshman coming in. I think they're bringing in 5 to 6 freshmen next year. But if I have to, I think Denaje Harris could be the turnaround guy, because he's going to be their big man depth, and it's going to be hard to rely on that true freshman. But I think he has what it takes to be consistent, but he's not going to get you more than 8 points per game. He's just going to be hitting the boards hard and getting your putback points.
Yeah.
So after them, we're going to jump into FAU. So Florida Atlantic for the Owls. Give it a second as switching tabs. So Florida Atlantic, they went 17-15 last season. I have them regressing a decent amount, because when you're at 17-15, and I think they're going to be 11 to 12 win team, that's what's going to hurt them. They're returning 40% of their minutes next season, so they're losing a bunch of depth guys, and I think they're losing their top scorer as well. Is Matre? I don't think Matre's coming back. So with Matre leaving, he was kind of the catalyst of that squad, along with Jalen Ingram. So when you're losing the two guys, where very similar to how Southern Miss had two high usage guys, those two were the guys with the ball in their hands the whole times. And if it wasn't there, it was in Sillon's hands, and he's a big guy. So Sillons and Forrest are going to have to run the show next year. They'll be competing exactly with, I believe, Southern Miss for that next to last spot, but they did beat ODU in the first round of the tourney. They were just an extremely average squad last season, which got them to 17-15. And when you're losing your two top guys, that's where I think we'll see a decent amount of regression with these guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I see. Yeah, you're right. Maitre's out. He's going to Samford. And then it also looks like they'll probably be losing Jalen Seabree. He's still only in the transfer portal. He hasn't committed anywhere else yet. But, I mean, I really think this is going to be the Cornelius Taylor show. He's about to be a sophomore. He was already at 11.5, three boards, 2 assists as a freshman. So you're going to see a lot of scoring from him. You're going to see a good amount of scoring from Forrest, and then Sillons as a big man, even though him and maybe Niang are like your only true size there. I don't see them being good by any means, but I think they're solidly above Southern Miss and Bryce at 12.
Yeah, they should be solidly above them, but if Forrest isn't scoring and you're relying on your 6'11" guy to be getting all of your points, is what it scares me. That's going to be, I think, a lethal pick and roll combo with those two. And then it's going to have to be Blackshear and Winchester out on the wings hitting the shots. And Blackshear needs to take a big step up from his freshman year. So if he grows in this offseason, he's someone that is going to pass, rebound, and get you buckets. So that's where Blackshear needs to do that. And then Winchester with his veteranness, the ball could be in his hands a decent amount. But if you really want a deep X factor on this team, rising sophomore DJ Robertson, I think, could be your guy. That he's going to be a pure point guard when Forrest isn't on there, or he could start as the point and let Forrest get off the ball. But I kind of like Forrest more when he's on the ball creating his own shot. So I think DJ Robertson could bring a second dimension to this team.
Yeah, he could. I think they have two really good true point guard, or well, it's actually kind of three with Robertson, Taylor, and Forrest. None of them are really all that big size wise. They're all 6 foot or 6'1". But I mean, Taylor's probably your biggest true scorer. Forrest probably the best all around, and then Robertson off the bench. I feel like it's gonna be solid for them. Not good enough to beat a lot of the teams in the conference, but I feel like it'll be solid.
Yep. So next we'll get into Middle Tennessee. So Middle Tennessee last season went 8-23. Not a good year at all for Nicholas McDevitt's squad. And I'm thinking that this team takes it up a little bit of a level because they're returning 72% of the minutes. But when you're only getting 8 wins and you're getting majority of your guys back, maybe that's not the best sign in the world. But I think they can break double digits this season. They have a pretty tough non-conference schedule that's been released so far. I'm not going to rattle off those squads. But last season, they just got embarrassed a decent amount of the times because they started off 3-0. Then they went to 3-5. Then they won a game to get to 4-5, and then they went to 4-16. So this team before February was just not that great. Then you get 3 more wins in February and March, so maybe that's good. But they're losing Reggie Scurry and Antonio Green, which I think could be issues. And CJ Jones is coming back, so I think that's their biggest hope for getting up there. But I just like this team's scoring ability. So I think this team could be much better on offense than they were last year, but defense is going to be their crutch again, where teams were just putting up high 80s and low 90s against them. But the craziest stat line that I saw when I was looking at this squad, they played Maryville, Tennessee, the renowned program that all D1 basketball fans know. They beat them 119-61. So I guess they got all their scoring out there because other games they were struggling to produce points.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I was being conservative putting these guys at 10 this year, but they just have so many new faces coming into the team that I feel like the look's going to be completely different. Like, they didn't have a ton of depth last year. So they have CJ Jones and then Sims, Jace Johnson, Eli Lawrence, Tyson Jackson, all coming back from last year's team. But then you bring in Brian Coffey, who was a transfer last year, who's eligible this year. Same thing with Jordan Davis, DeAndre Dishman, and Jalen Jordan. And then they have 2 more transfers coming in this year with Jared Jones, who's coming in from Northwestern, and Elias King, who's coming in from Mississippi State. Plus, you have Christian Fusel, who's coming in as a good incoming freshman. This team's going to look a lot different, which isn't usually the best sign for a mid-major team. But a lot of these guys are coming from high majors as transfers. So I think because a lot of these guys who are eligible this year were guys who put up really good numbers on other teams but just weren't getting the roles they wanted. So I'm thinking they're going to be really close to the middle, maybe almost at the higher half. And just because of their record last year, I was a little scared, and that's why I still had them at 10. But I like this team next year.
Yeah, I have them exactly at 10 as well. And bringing in Jordan Davis, I think, is huge. He had to sit out last season coming from Dayton. But with him, the combo of Jordan Davis and CJ Jones, where both of these guys are proven scorers in the league, I think each can get over 15 points per game next year. So that's where I like these two guys the most. But what scares me is who's their tallest guy on their roster? Tyler Millen?
Tyson Jackson, 6'9".
Yeah, I don't think Tyson gets that many minutes. He might, but
I don't know. He was at 5-5 last year, so I think they like him. And a lot of these transfers not the transfers from that are eligible this year from who transferred in last year, but Jared Jones is also 6'9", and then Elias King's 6'7". So those transfers bring in more depth, not like top end size, but that gives them 2'6'9" guys, 2'6'7" guys, a 6'8" guy. So I feel like they can survive with that type of height.
I just think this squad is just going to struggle so much on defense next year. I think this is a team, if you're a gambling guy, I think this is a team you look to bet the over on, because I think second chance points is going to kill this team next year, because they don't have a solid guy in the middle that's going to be able to guard the rim and clear the defensive boards. So that's where I think could be the Achilles heel of this team, is just defending on the inside when the two squads that we talked about, even though they're at the bottom, if they just pound it on the inside in them and get them to play almost a 5-guard lineup, it's going to be tough for these guys. But I think Middle Tennessee can take a small step next year, hopefully break double-digit wins, but still end up at the bottom half comfortably in the conference. So we'll so we'll go back to Florida after jumping out of there real quick. So we'll go to FIU. FIU last season was a very solid squad. They went 19-13, but what held this team back is they were 9-4 at the end of conference play, and then ended 19-13. So they went 500 in the conference, which isn't the best sign, because Conference USA had 3 outstanding schools last year, but this team got majority of their wins out of the conference, so that's what's kind of concerning for me. When they played all the top guys last season, like Mississippi State, NC State, and Minnesota, they weren't really in any of those games, which is concerning. And for FIU, they are returning 51% of their minutes, but most of them aren't significant minutes, because you're losing your 3 top contributors from last season, and one of them, and I think 2 of them were their leading scorers, if not 3 were. So that's where with FIU, they're going to need a lot of help in the scoring front next season, because they were pretty solid at scoring the ball last season. They ran at the 30th fastest tempo. So we'll have to see what they do this season, how they adjust. But I think we see a little bit of a fall off from them.
Yeah, I definitely see a fall off coming for them too. It's going to need to be a lot of Antonio Day running the backcourt. And I mean, I think again, going with that theme, I think the guy who needs to step up is Demon Kerrigan. He's gonna be their size. He's a 6'9" forward, even though he didn't get that much playing time last year. He's gonna need to get a lot of playing time this year, otherwise they're just gonna be too small for everybody else. So if he takes a big step, that'll be good. I think CD Kita, who sat out last year, is another 6'9" forward. He could help, but he hasn't shown anything at either of the first 2 schools he was at. And I know that was South Carolina and St. John's, which are bigger programs. But he needs to do something, because they don't have a lot of players coming in. And the guys who are still here, there's not enough size to match up with a lot of these other schools.
No, and with FIU, you're going to be relying on a lot of guys who got probably less than 50% of the minutes last season stepping up. Antonio Day is the guy I have the most confidence scoring the ball next season. And second in that rotation that I would think could score the next is Tevin Brewer, but he's a 5'8" point guard, so he's going to be running the show. And once again, this squad doesn't have a lot of height where a lot of the other schools, so FIU and FAU are the two schools that are lacking big men. So that's where Day and Brewer are just going to have to score, and then you hope Rashad Davis can step it up next season. But it's a lot of relying on unproven players, which could be a little bit of an issue for them.
Yeah.
So after FIU, we're going to travel up north a little bit up to Charlotte. So with the 49ers, Charlotte, they're going to be I wanted to give them a little bit more higher in the rankings because last season they finished right where I think they're going to come in again. They went 16-13 last season. I see an extremely similar right around 500 team with them. With Charlotte last year, they locked you down on defense and they let you never hit the board. So that's one thing I love to see from a squad, but they just lacked a reliable scorer. Jameer Young was the guy that was probably their most valuable player last season. They're returning about 50% of their minutes, so they're not losing top contributors. They're kind of losing more of their depth and guys transferring out. But I'm curious to hear from you who you think is going to be the top guy there and who's going to be your X factor for Charlotte, because this is a team where I could see them falling comfortably into the bottom, and at the same time, I could kind of see them making not a run for the title, but maybe becoming a top 8 school. So these guys, just looking at them, I saw both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, what I like for them is I like the freshmen they have coming in. They have the number 1 rated incoming recruiting class in Conference USA. They have 4 3-stars in Ali Khalifa, a 6'10" center.
I like him.
Yeah, he's from Australia. You got Caleb Bird, a 5'10" point guard. He might need a year to grow in to develop that frame a little bit. You got Jared Garcia, a 6'7" small forward from Connecticut. So he's going to be good. He's going to be starting automatically. I mean, he has to. And then you got And then you got Jackson Threadgill, a 6'6" shooting guard. All of them pretty much in the top 400. So that should give them some depth just automatically. Like, they can all comfortably play spot minutes for them. And then they lost Malik Martin and Cooper Robb, which isn't going to be that good because that's a lot of not a lot of their size, but that's a couple solid guards who are leaving them. But I think Jameer Young is going to have a great season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to need to see something from Milos Supika. Is 6'9", he's going to be a senior. And then Anzik Rosetto is some more size at 6'10", even though he really didn't play at all last year. And I think Caleb Stone Carawell redshirted last year. So I like to see what he does in his first true season with Charlotte. But I think they have enough coming back to be decent. It's going to come down to what do you get from your incoming freshman and what do you get from Marvin Cannon, the transfer from Washington State. Because if he just comes in and he's a force as like your swing guy at like the 2 or the 3, then I could see them being somewhere between like 5 and 7 in the conference. If he comes in, doesn't play at all, I could see them being a lot closer to 8 to 10.
Yeah, with these guys, I kind of have the same feel as you because I think they're going to be decent on offense decent on defense and not be too great in either one of those aspects and not be poor in either one of them. So I think they're going to be your classic run-of-the-mill team that's fighting just to stay 500. And Shepard and Young, I think, are just going to have to take the lead and getting scoring, because other than that, I'm not convinced. And when Ali Khalifa isn't a proven scorer, but could potentially get close to 3/4 of the game next year, because Sapika has shown some signs of life, but nothing too amazing. Oh, yeah, the Flyers just fucking scored. Let's go. Oh, sorry. That's where I think it's the Shepard and Young show with them next year. You're going to rely on your two guards, and if Sapika can play the X Factor role, then this squad will easily be over 500, but with just the question marks there, not too sure.
Yeah, I don't. It's gonna be tough. I mean, I hadn't checked yet, so I did not know Shepard was coming back. Him coming back definitely has me feeling a little bit more confident about them being.
Yeah, he might still just be in the portal, but that's where the thing I'm looking at still lists him on their roster, so that's where I think he should be coming back.
Yeah.
Next, we'll jump over to UTEP. So UTEP, they went 17-15 last season, 8-10 in the conference. UTEP was, they were the best defensive team in the conference last year, but they were also the second to worst offense in the country. So they were a team last season that you wanted to bet unders in their game. They had a long streak during the middle of the season where I think it was 7 straight went on the under train, and I hate betting college basketball unders, so I was just watching it and not making any money off of that. But with UTEP, they kind of have a senior-led squad, and they are bringing back 55% of their minutes, or not. They have they have 2 seniors and 2 juniors who I think are going to be their top guys next year. And past that, it's anyone's game past there, because they have a bunch of question marks in their depth. But Bryson Williams could be the top scorer in the conference next year. So that's the one thing that has me thinking that UTEP could potentially pick up where they struggled so much last season in offense.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about this team just because of how many moving pieces they have. Because they lose Caden Archie, they lose Kausi Izagwu, they lose Nigel Hawkins, they lose Jordan Lathan, and they bring in Jamal Bieniemy from Oklahoma. They bring in Christian Agnew, and they bring in Christian Soland. So there's just a lot of new pieces you have to integrate in a short amount of time with limited full team practices, and you lose a lot of your production from last year. So they also bring in Keontae Kennedy and Quincy McGriff as freshmen. It's just I think they're gonna have a tough start early in the year just because the team's gonna be so new. And it's not like they're all blue chip guys like you would get at like a Duke, where they don't have to have great team chemistry. They're just that good that they can play through it. So I think they're going to start off slow, and that's really going to determine their whole season. Because if they start off slow and give up on the season, then they could finish way lower than where we have them projected. But if they fight through it, I think they have the talent to still be decent this year.
Yeah, that's where I think UTEP is right at 8, which is right in your middle spot, because there's 14 teams in the conference. So I still think they're going to D you up. So if they can get any bit of offense other than out of Bryson Williams, I think that's where it can go. What do you think of Sully Boehm, or do you not like him?
No, I like him. I kind of like him a little less now that you just called him a bum. But
how do you say it, Boehm?
I think it's Baum.
Baum.
No, I actually think he's going to be their best player, and I think again, this is just the thing that I saw in this conference. I think F.A. Odige, I think him is as the guy in the middle or close to the middle, even if he's the 4, just that size is going to be big to see if he takes a step forward. Because in these mid-major conferences, I feel like everybody's going to have at least somebody who's going to be a good scorer at a guard, or like just a really good overall player as a guard. It's those teams that develop the big men that I feel like end up with the best runs.
You don't like, so yeah, Eric Villa could be one who he's just going to sit in the middle and not do much other than grab boards and block shots. So you're right there with Odige needing to get the buckets.
Yeah, that's what I'm a little worried about. Like, Villa is like when you're getting 5 boards and only 3 points, even if 2 of those a game are offensive rebounds, I'd want to see him at least 4 points, even if they never ran a play for him the entire season. Like, if you can grab 2 offensive rebounds, you should have 4 points a game at least. So
yeah, especially given his height.
Worried. Yeah. But I see them as middle of the road, but definitely one of the prime teams to fall out of the middle of the pack if they don't have a good start to the year.
Yeah, depends how tough that non-con schedule is. I haven't dived through who they've released yet because with everything going on, we usually have schedules out by now, but schedules are being delayed. Our teams are still rescheduling, so we got to see what's going on there. So next, we're going to jump over to Alabama and talk about the Blazers. So with UAB, they went 19-13 last season, so they were the 5th of the teams to have 19 or more wins last season. Rob Eason has got the squad kind of rolling. Once again, they're a team that did great in the non-con, but then kind of did very so-so going 9-9 in conference. So that's what kind of held them back. And what I think would have screwed them over in the conference tourney is they barely escaped UTSA. So that's where they would have had a tougher road. But what's stuck with me with this team last season is they played Kentucky and Texas back-to-back last season and hung in both of those games where they were expecting it to be blowouts. They actually showed up and played solid. They lost by 9 or 10 in each one of those, but it was closer than I would say what the score indicates. They're a squad that's bringing back right around 58% of their players, and Tavion Lovin is, if he grows, I think this is what brings the Blazers a little bit higher than 7th where they currently have them slated. I could see them potentially getting up to 5th, but I think we see this team go somewhere around 15-13 or 16-12 next season. I think you're on mute.
I swear I do that way too much. I think Lovin's going to be a really good player, and this is another team like UTEP. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces. They lose Luis Hurtado, they lose Jordan Brinson, they lose Zach Bryant, they lose Mokhtar Goye, they lose. Not even going to give it an attempt on his first name, but his last name's Akabuze. So they're all out, but they get in Trey Jamison from Clemson. They get Michael Ertl, a guy we talked about with who was with UL Monroe, and then they bring in another guy we talked about. These are a couple point guards in Ertl, and you got Quan Jackson coming in from Georgia Southern. Quan Jackson has already been ruled immediately eligible. So the 14 points a game he was averaging at Georgia Southern, I think is going to be huge for this team. It's just I don't know where their size is going to come from. Probably Tarnell Pearson, even though he didn't play that much last year. Maybe Kasim Nicholson. But
I think it's going to be their freshman, Ronji Gordon.
Yeah. He's going to be him a little bit, but you got to see how a guy, because he wasn't ranked super high coming out of high school. So that's going to be tough to see how he's adjusting. But I like their shooting because I know Ertl and Jackson are both good scorers. to go with Lovin, who's also a really good scorer. I think they'll be getting up and down. It's just who's going to be the guys grabbing the rebounds. Like, who do you trust most out of that group of guys who didn't really play that much last year?
Yeah, exactly what you're saying is this team has at least 4 to 5 proven scorers. It's going to be how can they play defense next year? And they didn't have any size last season at all. They kind of had the same exact thing. They had Gue, who was their tallest guy at 6'10". I mean, he was getting a decent amount of minutes, but nothing. I mean, they were significant, but I think it's something that another guy in the roster can go into. So with Ison's squad proving last season that height didn't matter that much to them, then maybe it rolls over again this season. But with the increase and the more proven taller guys in here, they might have to run that 4-guard lineup to perfection to break 500.
Yeah.
So after UAB, we're going to get to the Roadrunners. So with Texas San Antonio out in El Paso, I believe I said that correctly. They went 13-19 last season. I'm liking these guys' chances to take a step up next year. I believe you have them a little bit higher than I do by a spot. I think we have the next. No, yeah, you have them higher than me by a spot. And with UTSA, this squad is going to score. That is what I love about this team. Because if you haven't heard, Javon Jackson's coming back, right?
Yeah. I saw what he was doing last year, and I had to double check. I was like, this guy didn't transfer, did he? Because with what he did last year, I would have assumed he would have been out of there.
Yeah, with Javon Jackson, I think this might be one of the few guys during our entire previews. I think he might score 25 points per game next season. It's just going to be as Keaton Wallace taking some of those buckets. Like if you want to get someone, and if you can find anyone to take the bet and say Javon Jackson averages more than 23 points per game next season and you're getting plus money, I'd say hammer that, because this dude is, I don't want to call him the James Harden of the college basketball, but he just is going to have that ball in his hand more than anyone else. And Keaton Wallace is just going to become a catch and shoot player with the way Javon Jackson plays basketball.
Yeah. I mean, I know both of these guys are going to be good scorers. I think they both averaged less points than they did last year.
Ooh.
Only if they're, because I know they get Eric Parrish in from Nevada. He's a guard. He might take some of that scoring away from him just a little bit. And then because he's eligible to come in midterm, so he'd be there around January 1st. Right around the time conference play starts. And then you bring in another guy who I watched a lot of in the American Conference last year. They bring in Cedric Alley Jr. from Houston, and he was a good player for Houston. He's going to be really good for UTSA this year. So he can take some more of that scoring too. And then Jacob Germani is going to take a step forward as a sophomore center this year at 6'11". I think his scoring goes up. Same thing with Barisic. I think his scoring goes up. I think just the fact of those 4 guys who can also score to take some of the pressure off them doesn't make them worse scorers or worse players. I think just like the pure numbers go down a little bit from last year.
Yeah, I can see it just because you have this is one of the squads where at the top half, I really like the starting 5 and the rotation. UTSA, I'm just a little bit concerned about their defense next season, but I know these guys are going to score, and I love the height they have with Barisic and Germany. So that's where I think these guys are going to be a deep sleeper, but I wanted to put them higher, but I just like they were in the running for my dark horse, but the squad that we're getting to next, who you have much lower than I do, this is where I think that they're the big time sleeper, but with UTSA, I think you see a huge increase of what they did last season. They're going to build up that school a lot better. I don't think I think they get at least 18 wins next year, so that's where I am with them. But my sleeper for next season, who I think has a chance to make a run at this conference title, is the Thundering Herd. I love this Marshall squad. They're one of my low-key favorite teams for this pure fact that they played at the third fastest tempo last season. So if you want to watch a squad that gets up and down the court and plays more of the three balls or layups only, this is your squad to watch next year. They just weren't efficient running that offense last year, which was my only concern for them. But they're returning 96% of their minutes. So they're bringing everybody back unless Steven tells me someone transferred out. But this team, I like their depth the most. I like their starting five a lot. They just don't have that one player like Jackson who can just be that go-to scorer, where these guys have four separate guys that I'm sure can get the bucket in the basket. So that's where I really like Marshall's chances to come in and steal the conference next year.
Yeah, I mean, Kinsey's going to be a great player. Bennett's going to be strong as probably a power forward. I don't know. They have a lot of size. It's like it looks like they rotate a lot of it in and out fast.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like West Virginia style. Because
Yeah.
you're just that third fastest tempo, those big guys can't handle it the whole game. So that's where you need to have the depth. So that's where playing that up and down style, I like the build of the rotation that they have.
Yeah, I think they're going to be good. You were right. Nobody transferred in or out. So I think it'll be interesting because they have 5 guys who didn't play at all last year. I'm trying to see who was a transfer and who redshirted. But I think Luke Thomas isn't doing anything. Collins, I think, might have redshirted. Same thing with Rucker. Same thing with Sturm. Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna be good. I don't know. I think the way they ran their offense, they were trying to hide their deficiencies as much as they could.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much improvement you can really see from a team that could really only play their way. Like, I'd have to see them play and beat teams who play the opposite way from them for me to trust them as a true contender with these other 4 teams. But I do like what they have.
The reason why I like them is, one, with all this going on with returning 96% of the guys and rolling out the same thing, and they're the squad that plays with the highest tempo by far in this conference. So they're doing something different that not every other school is doing. So I kind of like that, as they're the outlier. And just given the continuity of the squad, and even if it's a shortened training camp and preseason, all these guys know each other. Kinsley, West, Taylor, and Bennett are all going to be studs on this team. It's what you're going to get from Williams, and Sarnich is going to be huge. I really would like to see them bring in a better freshman than Keelan that they brought in. So that's where I would like to see adding more guys. But I'm surprised you probably just didn't say this guy's name because you didn't want to tempt his last name. But Miljandovic, the 7-footer, he's a rising sophomore. So I don't think he gets a lot of minutes, but I think he's something different where he will kind of make them not play that up and down style when he's in there. So I think that's what could limit his minutes. But if he shows his ability to get up and down the court, I think that's where they go to the next level. But they got 4 guys on the roster that are listed at 6'9". So like you said, that rotation's huge on them. Their guard depth is just what's a little bit concerning for me. But they just might go huge next season and say, just try to match us.
Yeah, exactly. Plus they have, it looks like if I'm reading this right, it looks like they have 4 guys who are coming in who should be redshirt freshmen. I don't know if they can redshirt 4 guys in a year, but if Devin Collins, DeJour Rucker, Ty Sturham, if they all come in, that's like Rucker and Collins are both also 6'7", 6'8" guys who, when you're spacing the floor like that, they can rebound the ball too because they're technically listed as guards. It says on here, so just guards with that kind of length will be that much more beneficial to the type of program they run. Where it's like we want guys who can shoot, and if you have length and can grab open space rebounds with your size, then that's going to be perfect for them. But again, just these other teams, I think it's going to be too tough for them to crack the top 4.
Yeah, I can see that. And the biggest for the next squad we're going to get into is who I think's coming in fourth. Steven, you have them up at 3, so we're not too far off with these guys, and that's Louisiana Tech. So this is the squad. They went 22-8, but due to their conference record of being 13-15, they finished in second instead of being first. So with Louisiana Tech, they beat Mississippi State and played Creighton and IU pretty tough last year. They beat North Texas late in the season while losing to them at home. So if they would have beat them both times, it would have been good. But what cost them was, I think, their late season overtime loss at Western Kentucky from getting them the first seed. They're just losing a little bit too much for me. That's where I think Marshall could potentially leapfrog them, but I'm not sold in that yet. But returning only 54% of your minutes, but you're bringing back Amari Archibald, who was a stud last year. He shot 38% from 3 as 6'3" as their shooting guard. So that's where I kind of like Archibald's style paired with Ledoux and Crawford. So I think they have a solid 3 guy. It's just who's the next guy stepping up. It's probably going to be Pemberton. But this squad just has a little bit too many moving parts to me, and you'll let me know who's coming in and who's going out.
Nobody headed out. It's going to take me a second to remember who is coming in, but I know they are.
It's Jacob Bass or Bass
there.
is one of the biggest guys they have coming, or Jace Bass is one of the biggest guys they have coming in from.
Yeah, he's a JUCO transfer, I think. Yeah, Long Beach City College. Yeah, JUCO transfer. The guy I'm most excited about for them is Kenny Hunter, the 6'10" center. He's coming
freshman.
Yep, 222nd in the country. That gives them size to go with Andrew Gordon, because really Gordon's their only big guy. So I think Hunter has a chance, just looking off the guys who I've seen who are committed as true freshmen. He's the guy I see with the most potential to come in and be freshman of the year in the conference next year.
I like that.
So if you go Ledoux, Archibald, Pemberton, Gordon, and then Isaiah Crawford as a swing guy, averaged 8.5 points, 4.5 boards as a freshman last year. I'm expecting them to fall a couple spots, but still be a very good team again next year.
Yeah, with La Tech, they're going to be a good squad. They were extremely solid on both sides of the ball, top 100 in each. I just think we see slight regression from them, which is going to bring them from their 22-8 to about 18 wins. So I think they're only going to drop 4 wins with what they have leaving. The biggest thing is Muhammad going out of there. I really like the way Muhammad played. He just dominated the inside. He shot 61% from 2-point range. So losing that proven inside guy, and if you are correct and Hunter does get freshman of the year, this is going to catapult this team back into the second spot for me, because that's the only thing holding them back. Was I'm just not sold on Andrew Gordon. But if you're high on Hunter and think he can get freshman of the year, then I think this squad is right back in there for the second spot, if not higher.
Yeah, I mean, I like him because he's a really good rebounder, and he already has a solid frame. He's not coming in as a freshman who's slight of frame. He's 6'10", 235, and one of his main strengths has always been rebounding. So if you got the scoring at guards, especially with veteran guys, and you can just let him get in there and just be like, the guards will draw double teams, you'll get open, just convert the dunks and get offensive and defensive rebounds. I think he'll shine as a freshman this year.
So next, I'll get into the squad I have coming in third. Steven has these guys coming in fourth. So we had these two schools flip-flop, and that's Old Dominion. We both see huge steps for Old Dominion next season, because they went 13-19 last year, but they went 9-9 in conference. So they kind of just got it trummeled in non-con play, because they started off 3-1, then hit conference play at 4-9. So they did end up dropping 8 games in a row. So you never like to see that from a college, but it is what it is. It's a new season for ODU. And the reason why I like this team is, once again, I just love their rotation except for a big guy. This squad is just missing a guy inside, but with the way that ODU plays and what they like to do is they like to play the slow, drown-out game. They're going to lock you down on defense. They're projected to be the best defensive team in the conference with lacking size. They went to 13 wins. I want to kind of go out on a ledge and say they get to 20 this year. So an increase in 7 would be huge for this team. So they basically are going to look to be flip-flopping their record. But with majority of their guys returning and the way that I like the combination of Curry and Green, that's where I think this squad could be next level. And I didn't even mention Wade yet, who's very solid as well. Mute.
Fuck, I swear to God. I think Malik Curry is going to be their best player. I like Azipke and Reese probably just trying to hold down the middle as just 2 6'8" guys. I mean, like, you got DeJour Dickens, who's a 7-footer, but he's about to be a senior, and he's never really been more than just a late rotation player, so I don't really see it coming for him. They're gonna need. They bring pretty much everybody back. They lose Marquise Godwin. He transferred to Hampton, which I guess makes sense. He's just going home for his senior year. The scoring is going to be fine. You need somebody to replace Aaron Carver's 10 rebounds a game, which maybe Azipke and Reese could do, but I see them taking a good step forward. I don't see them passing any of the teams that were in the top 3 last year.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm just it might be a little bit of a bias that I have right now, but if you're bringing back more than 80 to 90% of your roster, especially given how these circumstances are going, I just love teams that have continuity going into next season, which is why I think they could get one more win than La Tech, but I wouldn't be surprised if both of those squads finish with the same record next year.
Yeah.
So next, we'll get into the squad that Steven has taking home the regular season title, who I got coming in second, and that's the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky. They went 20-10 last season, 13-5 in conference. This team was just extremely efficient on offense. I think they're going to have the best offense in the country in the conference next season. But what's holding me back from putting them up a step above Western Kentucky or above North Texas is Western Kentucky is I just don't like their defense as much. I like what the Mean Green can do a little bit more on defense, but they got 3 seniors that are going to lead the way for this WKU squad, and that's where I think that's going to be the game changer that takes them above La Tech and ODU, but keeps them right just below North Texas.
Yeah, I mean, Western Kentucky, I trust a lot because they have a senior guard who's going to be a great scorer in Travion Hollingsworth, I think he's going to be a star for them. And then you got Josh Anderson, who's another guy who's a top hunter recruit. He's going to be solid in this conference. He already was a pretty good player. I think he's going to be really good this year. And then Jordan Rawls could maybe be running point with Hollingsworth at shooting guard. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a numbers bias, but Charles Bassey, when he played, was always really good. It's just, is he going to stay healthy all year? I think if he stays healthy all year, none of the big men, I don't really care what their size is, none of them have the talent to match up with him for a full 40 minutes. And so I think just him on the inside, and then you have good shooting and talented players on the outside. I just think they have a balance that North Texas is the closest team to playing with them, but I don't think anybody, especially if this was like the NBA where you were doing a series, I don't think anybody matches up with Western Kentucky for a full series.
Yeah, but Bassey is a double-double machine. Yeah. So that's the one thing I do like with him. But the one name is Carson Williams is coming back, right? Because I love the compliment that he has to Hollingsworth, where both of those guys are 15 points per game, easy. Then you got Josh Anderson and Bassey, who's going to give you somewhere between 10 to 15 a game. So those 4 are great, but then you just have a deep drop-off with Rawls and Cooper being your next 2 guys, where I just like North Texas depths a little bit more. But if you're just saying starting 5-wise, I think Western Kentucky takes it. But to your point, it's going to rely on Bassey's health.
Yeah, it is. And I think this is going to be his breakout year, because I didn't think there was any chance he stayed at Western Kentucky for 4 years. So I think this is the year where he's going all out the whole year, proving himself to get into the draft for the 2021 class before all the high school seniors get mixed in and he gets dropped a bunch of spots into like a second-round guy.
Yep, and then for the squad that I think is going to come in first, Steven has them in second. That's North Texas to Mean Green. They went 20-11, but they went 14-4 in conference, so they got it. And the reason why I enjoyed watching this team last season is they were the 34th overall most efficient offense in the country, but they played at the 3rd slowest tempo in the entire nation. So they dictated games, made teams play their style. When you watched Marshall play North Texas last year, that was just the biggest contrast to styles. And North Texas just kind of owned that, where Marshall ended up, they barely snuck out the win in their one meeting against Marshall, but that was where they proved their will in the second game of the conference that we don't care what type of style you play, we're just going to own it. And then their pure point guard, Javion Hamlet, who is a JUCO transfer, won newcomer of the year and player of the year in the conference last season, where Hamlet's scoring ability of 20 points per game, he's going to get you about 5 assists per game. So that's where his just overall level is. I think it's his, unless Bassey stays healthy the whole season, I think he could take it again. But I think Hamlet might go back-to-back as the conference player of the year. And then they have 5 seniors on this roster with Jalen Jackson mixed in. So that's where I just like the ability from this squad, where I like their depth. They're going to rely on a freshman a little bit more down the roster. So when you get to like the 9th and 10th man, that's where it gets a little bit more concerning for me. But with this team's top 6 to top 8 guys, I think they're better than everyone in the conference. But overall, like I said in the last one, Bassey and the other three guys for them, they could potentially upset these guys, but I think North Texas stays on top again.
Yeah, what has me not as sold about North Texas is if they're playing a team that's more guard oriented, like a Marshall or like a Louisiana Tech. I think their slower style works a lot more to their advantage. But I think Western Kentucky has the big guys. They can play the slower pace and still match them. And that's where I think when you have higher talented big guys, if North Texas wants to slow the game down, Western Kentucky is like, we're fine with slowing the game down. And there's a lot of other teams who need to get up more shots, even if they're not shooting that higher percentage. So they're going to be really good because they bring back so many of like their leading scorers from last year. So they're still going to be a team to, like, I guess the team to beat going into the season. But I think coming out of the season, this is the year where Western Kentucky finally comes out on top.
Yep, and that matchup to watch is going to be Bassey versus Zachary Simmons next season. Who wins that matchup could determine who wins the games. Bassey definitely has the greater skill, but Simmons, size-wise, can match up with him. But if the Hilltoppers were to get Simmons into foul trouble, that's where they might get run over by. But I still like the Mean Green's guard play where Hamlet, Jackson, Reese, and Bell's a little bit more of their small forward. But those four guys, I really like what they bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I like them too. I think that matchup between them and Western Kentucky is going to be a game that deserves to be pretty much nationally televised because that's going to be a really good game to watch.
All right, let's just round out our top six real quick just because there's 14 teams. We're running a little bit long. I know you have something you've been dying to get to. We got a question from Goose real quick. Who's going to be the player of the year in Conference USA? I said Hamlet. I think he wins it for back-to-back years. I think you're going to go with Bassey, but I don't want to talk for you.
I'm going to go with Jivion Jackson from UTSA.
Just because he's going to score 25 points per game?
Not just because he can do that, and he, even with his size, he can still rebound at 4 or 5 a game. And I think he'll be a good assist guy this year. Like, I think if he puts up those same numbers he put up last year, like, you're not going to get the national love that you should get, but he could, like, he does this stuff that if he did it almost at a lot of other places, people would be screaming for him to be an All-American.
Yeah, if you get more than 20 points per game, you almost deserve to be in that consideration. So in 6th, I got UTSA. In 5th, I got Marshall, who's my sleeper to take it. 4th, I got La Tech. 3rd, I got ODU. 2nd, I got the Hilltoppers. And 1, I got North Texas.
All right, and at 6, I got UAB. 5, I got UTSA. 4, Old Dominion. 3, Louisiana Tech. 2, North Texas. 1, Western Kentucky.
Nice. So Steven, he's going to get back on the soapbox again. He's been following this media outlet's top 40 teams, and he's got some – Goose, if you're here, you might want to put in the earplugs. He kind of got you in here, so make sure you tweet at Steven Carlson97 with all of your takes from here. But let's hear it.
Okay, these guys suck. They said they were doing a top 45. They put UConn at 44. And then I'm looking at it now. You got Indiana at 24. Indiana is going to be good. Indiana hasn't been around 24 in the last, they haven't been there in a while. They think Ohio State's 25th. Ohio State's barely 250th when they're playing teams in their own conference. You can't have a team that's that bad in conference play as a top 25 team. It just doesn't make sense. And then you put Memphis. I know Memphis is good, but I mean, we beat Memphis and we were a better team than Memphis at the end of the year. And we brought in pretty much the same type of talent for this year. So
Mhm.
there's no business for them being 14 spots higher than us in the rankings this year. And then you got Richmond at 32. Until I see a A10 team come in and play a Power 5 schedule one time, I'm not putting them 12 spots ahead of a team that's going to finish top 3 in a Power 5 conference. That's not going to happen. And then like the ones that I kind of understood were ones that I still thought they were underrating a little bit. Like I think both teams in Arizona, I think Arizona and Arizona State are better than those other teams I mentioned, and they're behind all of them. So it's not even just a UConn thing. There's just teams that are better than other teams that I almost feel like they have to be doing it on purpose just to get a reaction because it doesn't make sense.
Well, what's the big thing with the squad that you got someone to join in to talk about? I want to hear your thoughts.
Oh yeah,
As
no,
Goose said, "Are you rah rah?" So you got
I
to come
wanted
back to
to.
that.
I know. I want to make sure I did it separately. I had to make this its own part of the rant. They put Rutgers 28th, and they put UConn 44th. That's incorrect. UConn's won 5 national championships since the last time Rutgers even knew what an NCAA tournament berth looked like. I mean, you cannot. They get a couple of good recruits one time, but at the same time, they're Rutgers. What are they going to do? Actually win important games for once? I haven't seen them do that since I was alive. Like I can't just be like, these guys have been bad a lot of the time, so now they're getting good recruits, automatically 28th. I don't think so. Like you can't put teams with coaches that have more proven like they've proven that they can develop talent better. They get equal, if not better, talent. They've made bigger strides early in their career as a coach at a school. And they're like, you know what? That guy's been getting a lot better, a lot faster. You guys are 44th. You guys have been bad forever. You had one good year last year, didn't even have a tournament. And now you get what? They had one top 100 guy. You get one top 100 guy to go with what you had, 28th.
Geo Baker is a big shot maker, from the words
No,
of Guth. And you got the best home court advantage in the nation. The rack is
in the
back.
nation. I don't even like Gonzaga. Gonzaga's home court advantage is way better than Rutgers. These guys, they don't know how to rank college basketball teams. I don't know why I have to say it every time, but it's just like,
Oh, give me a UConn and Rutgers game next season, please. Have them meet in the tourney somehow. I need to see how this pans out because, I mean, I do like what UConn's got, but who's gonna D up Geo Baker on your squad?
who's gonna D up Geo Baker?
It was a question.
The entire team is gonna D up Geo Baker. We got long arm guys everywhere. We are just ripping him every time he gets the ball. I don't care if he makes shots. He's not going to be able to make shots when the ball's out of his hand before he can even go up with the jumper.
I don't want to say I'm split on this. Both of these squads, I think next season are going to take decent size improvements. If I had to give it, I got Connecticut and Rutgers easily in my top 30 for schools next year. I think between 20 and 30 where these two are going to be preseason, not at the end of the season, but coming in what I see, I don't think there's much difference between these two schools where UConn's offense is going to be probably at top 10 in the nation, but their defense, I think, is going to struggle more and not rip people every time they come up the court, because if they did that, I don't think they would be
top 50 defense, guaranteed.
And then with Rutgers D, man, I don't know if you're sleeping on them or what, but they're gonna be able to hang with Connecticut's top 10 because I think Rutgers has a top 15, if not top 10 defense next season.
UConn is 3 to 4 guys deeper than Rutgers is going to be this year. That's the difference. UConn can run out legitimately 12 guys. I think Rutgers can run out 8, maybe 9.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think you got a little bit of a contrast of styles between these two schools. UConn's going to be solid on O, a little bit weaker on defense. Rutgers is going to be a little bit weaker on offense, but solid on defense. And Ron Harper, don't sleep on him as well with Geo Baker. Those two is a solid duo to go up with you guys.
I don't know. I think if you think the top end's the same, which I think the top end's close enough, I think when you have 3 more guys who you can run out and you're not getting really fatigued at all, then that's where the difference is. Like when you're trying to make it to those TV timeouts, when you're just trying to finish the end of a half, UConn can do it with guys who are still true Power 5 type guys. I think Rutgers is trying to do it with guys who are a little bit better suited to be good players in mid majors, not really contributing players on a Power 5 team.
Sounds good. Well, that is the episode for this week. That was our Conference USA preview. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and joined in with us. We're finally into all of the big conferences. They just keep getting better week in and week out at this point because we're officially in your solid mid-majors and top major schools. We hit Conference USA this week. Next week, we're probably going to double up, if not give you one a little bit later with the Missouri Valley and the Mountain West Conference. Then we're getting into the West Coast, the A10, the AAC, the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the ACC. I left one out on purpose there. So thank you very much. My name's Rex. As usual, you can follow us at The Breakdown Sports on Facebook. Check out our website at thebreakdownsports.com. Steven's my usual partner in crime in the college b-ball world. We got you covered. He loves his Huskies, obviously, so make sure you tweet at him with anything you think Huskies related. You want to sign off real quick?
Yep. You can follow me on Twitter at StephenCarlson97 so I can show you that UConn is going to be a top 10 team this year at the end of the year. And I want to get that Missouri Valley out of the way as soon as possible because I'm all in on Boise State. Me and John all in on Boise State this year. Mountain West be different.
And that's it. We'll see you guys later on. Thank you all.